Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be going over the pitiful fight announcement that UFC 300 has just gotten. Dana White kind of coping really hard and really trying his best to promote this fight. We'll go through the video. And what I believe the UFC is going to do for UFC 300, I think there is something on the wayside. I think we're at least getting 2 more title fights. I don't think he's lying there, but we'll get to that in the later part of the video. Let's start with this.
All right, everybody. On August 13, 2019, history was made when Wei Li beat Jessica Andrade to become the first Chinese champion in UFC history. Well, guess what? 5 years later, we will see history being made again as Wei Li faces #1 contender Yan Jinan for the UFC strawweight title on UFC 300. And this is the first time 2 Chinese contenders have faced off for a world title.
Okay. #1 red flag. I'm sorry. If part of the selling point of the fight that you're putting on UFC 300 is, I'm just going to be real, something as minute that this is the first time that a Chinese champion has fought a Chinese contender. Really? Like, That is the thing that is selling it, like, for real. Look at how the first ever Chinese versus Chinese title fight. All right, cool. Can we get better fights for this card? I mean, like, there was also the possibility that we were going to see the strawweight champion in Wei Li fight the flyweight champion in Alexa Grasso, and you fumbled that because you don't want to lose Alexa Grasso before your Mexican Independence Day card at the Sphere because you're worried that Alexa Grasso could lose. Like, #1, that's a big problem I have with this.
Why is this such a badass fight?
If you have to explain why your fight is a big deal, you have already failed. Watch how he sells this fight.
Let me tell you why. Wei Li has 19 finishes and 24 wins. That's an 80% finish rate. She is tied for second most title wins in strawweight history, and she was involved in arguably one of the greatest fights ever versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk.
We know Wei Li is a badass. Like, she's one of the few fighters that gives me faith in women's MMA. Wei Li hard carries strawweight, dude. I am so happy she is champion and not Rose. I'm sorry. It just doesn't work. That's not the problem with this. Nobody is arguing that Wei Li fighting on this card is a bad thing, but the fact is, watch how he sells the title challenger, and I'm gonna give you what you could have done.
Her last fight was the most dominant statistical win ever in UFC women's history against Amanda Lemos. She outstruck her 288-21 in that fight. She landed the most strikes on the ground by a UFC strawweight ever.
It's only women's strawweight. Like, I get it. I get what we're doing here. It's like, you're not telling a lie, but at the same time, you're not being 100% truthful. There is not a men's strawweight, so it's not like we're comparing these 2 divisions. You just had the best performance in your division. Like, let's say that for what it is. Again, Wei Li is an amazing fighter. My favorite women's champion right now.
Now, Yan is the first Chinese female ever signed to the UFC.
Bro, are you serious? That is the selling point? She is the first Chinese fighter that we've ever signed. I'm sorry, who cares? Like, really? That was the first thing that you could think of?
UFC, she's got the most head strikes landed in a single UFC strawweight fight ever.
Again, it's just women's strawweight. There's no men's strawweight. Cool stat, Wei Li clears no diff.
She is coming off a first-round knockout against Jessica Andrade in under 3 minutes, which, by the way, she was a 2-1 underdog in that fight.
That is the only marketable thing that you could say about that. That's it. That's really it. We're going to play the video a little bit more because he says one more thing that means a lot, but legit. Wei Li, most dominant strawweight ever, versus the lady that really's only notable thing that she's done in her entire career is he beat Jessica Andrade in the first round. That is really it. Let's be real, that's what it is. Let me tell you what you could have done. You could have just done, Zhang Wei Li is fighting Alexa Grasso, the person to beat Valentina Shevchenko, UFC 300, double champ fight, Wei Li versus Alexa Grasso. That sells itself. I don't have to talk it up. There is no, let me tell you why this is a big fight. No, you don't have to do that. The fact that you have to do that for this fight is the biggest red flag I've ever seen.
And she has 8 first-round knockouts. This fight has badass written all over it.
No, it doesn't.
So, there's one of the title fights for UFC 300. I will have at least 2 or more for you tomorrow.
That's it, the interesting part. Now, for the sake of giving him, this courtesy, I'm going to assume that the next 2 fights are title fights and he's not leading us on and only one of those is a title fight. It's only 2. He says 2 or more. It's 2. Because I think there's going to be one more and we're going to get to what that is. But let's go through it. I believe the title fight that he is going to announce, and he didn't want to announce it with this fight, it's Belal Muhammad versus Leon Edwards, because I swear if you would go on Twitter and say, Zhang Wei Li versus Yan Xiaonan is the women's MMA fight for UFC 300, and Belal Muhammad is facing off against Leon Edwards for the welterweight title, dog, Oil Dana White is going to be the #1 trending thing in sports by the end of the day. Like, dude, this was posted right afterwards. People are going crazy, okay? And do you blame them? You call people a casual for not liking this obvious filler matchup. But if you announce Belal Muhammad versus Leon Edwards, I don't think it's going to be the main event. I think there's something else that I think they're going to do. But I think he's going to get another matchup to dampen the blow that Twitter is going to hit him with. But I do believe Belal Muhammad versus Leon Edwards is the safest bet. Leon Edwards says that he wants to fight on UFC 300. He is one of the few champions that can fight on UFC 300. Belal Muhammad is the #1 contender. It is what it is. UFC 300, do it. Please, Leon, just win. However, let me tell you, I think there's going to be 2 more, including Leon Edwards. So, I think the next one is going to be Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. I've given up doing dream matchups. I think I'm just going to be more realistic now. I think it's going to be Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. I think that's the most likely matchup the UFC is going to do. It's the safest matchup they can do. It's going to be a fun fight. They both have power in their hands. I think it ends in a finish, doesn't go to a decision. It's a fun fight. Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. Make that the main event. Make Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad the co-main. The last title fight, and yes, there is one more title fight. I think I know what it is. Before I lead you on, it is going to be Khamzat Chimaev versus Strickland or Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya upon his return. Let me tell you why. Because Khamzat Chimaev said in an interview that he was promised the next title shot if Strickland beat Dricus. I don't think he was allowed to say this. And this is, like, I don't think a lot of people would look up this interview. But let me tell you how he says this.
Fight now, who is winning the fight? He has a good fighter who's fighting with du Plessis, and if he wins against this guy, so for sure we're gonna fight. 100% should be. They promised for me that fight. So now we're gonna wait who is winning the fight and then take them.
I think that pause was him realizing he wasn't allowed to say that. Well, we'll get to that in a second. But, yep, Khamzat Chimaev was promised Sean Strickland if Strickland beat Dricus du Plessis. And the reason why I believe this is new information is because Kamaru Usman versus Khamzat Chimaev was supposed to be a #1 contenders match. Khamzat Chimaev did not have the performance that they wanted him to have, so they didn't put him in the top 5 rankings. So, I think they gave him an ultimatum. They're like, okay, if Strickland beats Dricus du Plessis, then we can justify making Khamzat Chimaev versus Sean Strickland because it sells well. The fans will want it for UFC 300 because the fights that we're giving them, They're going to beg for this matchup. They're not going to care if it doesn't make sense. And it's crazy Dana White privilege. Also, if you think Khamzat Chimaev doesn't have Dana White privilege, may I remind you that when Paulo Costa fell through against Khamzat Chimaev, they called up Sean Strickland, who at that time was the champion, the middleweight champion, to do a short notice fight in Abu Dhabi against Khamzat Chimaev. In what world can somebody make their, I know it's not his debut, it was supposed to be his ranked middleweight debut into the division against the champion? That is some Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, John Jones level of Dana White privilege, that the first person that you get to fight is the champion on short notice. Strickland says no. His head coach confirms that he was offered the fight before Kamaru signed. They give it to Kamaru Usman. They make sure it's a 3-round fight because they know Khamzat Chimaev does not have great cardio. He just doesn't. He has a spectacular first-round cardio. I think he loses the first 5-round fight that he does with an opponent that can take him out of the first. That's my opinion. Maybe I'll be wrong there. But Khamzat Chimaev got some crazy Dana White privilege. What type of person gets an immediate title shot upon their breaking into the rankings of a division? That is insane, especially when you have Dricus du Plessis, who beat Robert Whittaker at that point. And if you think that the UFC is beyond just giving it to Khamzat Chimaev, and at this point, Strickland doesn't know. Strickland doesn't know that his next fight, if he beats Dricus, is going to be Khamzat. I think he believes it's going to be somebody like Jared Cannonier, because that logically makes sense. But might I remind you that O'Malley beat Petr Yan of almost a year before fighting Aljamain Sterling. Sean O'Malley was told that he would be fighting for the title right after beating Petr Yan by a split decision. Aljamain Sterling beat Henry Cejudo, and he was forced into a face-off against Sean O'Malley and fought 3 months after that, when O'Malley, at that point, almost had a full year of knowing that he was fighting Aljamain. That's why O'Malley, in the face-off, says, good luck cutting weight, because Aljamain Sterling is 175 pounds and fights at bantamweight. He is a weight bully. Make no mistake about it. That's what he is. But if you look at his fights before, we're talking like it's up to a year in between fights. Or at best, we're talking like, I think, about 6 months in between a fight. That's not unreasonable, but I understand he wasn't an active champion. That was my biggest complaint about him. They gave Sean O'Malley the advantage and the heads up that he was fighting Aljamain almost a whole year in advance. They tried to do the same thing with Israel Adesanya and Dricus du Plessis. Sean O'Malley does the face-off. He knew he was doing this. Aljamain didn't know that was happening. Israel Adesanya. They wanted Dricus to fight on almost 4 weeks' notice against Israel. No, they want Dricus du Plessis 4 weeks' notice to fight Israel Adesanya at Perth, Australia. They thought Robert Whittaker was going to win. They were forcing the challenger to fight almost on short notice, just so they can tilt the odds in Israel's favor. Dricus says no, and by some miracle Strickland was able to win, and that's why I think they're still mad at Dricus du Plessis. And they had a smear campaign against Dricus because they're so pissed off that they ruined their plan. That's what ended up happening. So the UFC is not above doing this. I think if Dricus is able to beat Strickland, then I can see them doing a whole Israel Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis. And if Dricus says no again, then they're going to do Israel Adesanya against Khamzat Chimaev for the interim title on UFC 300. That is what I think they're going to do. That's my whole rant about it. So to end it all off, the fights that I think they're going to do, not in any particular order, is going to be Jamal Hill fighting Alex Pereira for the light heavyweight belt. They're going to do some rendition of Strickland, Khamzat, Israel, or Dricus for the co-main. They're going to do Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad in the feature fight. They're going to do Zhang Wei Li versus Yan Jinan. And then they're going to do Arman Sarukian versus Charles Oliveira for the entry fight into the main card. That is what I think UFC 300 is. Not terrible, but at the same time, it is kind of crazy that a challenger can know they're fighting for a title before the actual champion knows that he's fighting. That is some crazy Dana White privilege. Khamzat Chimaev has Dana White privilege. That's all I'm really trying to say. I like the card. Tell me what you think about this. If you found out something new in this video that you didn't know before, please consider a like, comment, subscribe. I make daily MMA content. You subscribe to me, you get daily MMA content. That's the deal we have going on. And I think that's going to be it for the video. Adios, guys. Thanks for watching. Adios.